بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Brothers and sisters, we have seen how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the smallest of surahs conveys the greatest of messages. And one of the greatest atrocities that the Muslims have seen in this 21st century is none other than which is the front news or the cover news of all the newspapers today. And that is how some of the people of our times think that they have become greater than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That they think that they're able to do whatever they will and whatever they please and try to justify it under the name of freedom. They're like, we preserve freedom and we grant our citizens the right to express themselves any way they like, any way they want to express themselves. So what they came about with was pictures or portraits of the Prophet ﷺ, or what they call caricatures, meaning cartoons of the Prophet ﷺ, in which they tried to demoralize and debase the honor and the position of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, brothers and sisters, it is not just the Muslims who revere the Prophet ﷺ and recognize the great stance he had as a person and as a leader and as a politician and as a militant, but rather the non-Muslims recognize this as well. A lot of you may have heard that a book was compiled sometime during the 80s and the 90s about the 100 greatest personalities. Who was number one? It was none other than our beloved Prophet ﷺ. This is something they have come to understand, that the Prophet ﷺ, not only does he have a great station in Islam, but also throughout history. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had granted this to him, that he would be recognized for his greatness throughout time. And now, in order to go to extremes and show how free they really are, they go and portray and draw the Prophet ﷺ in the wickedest of fashions and manners. If you look at this, it should make you sick and disgusted and should enrage you with anger. One of the pictures explicitly, subhanallah al-azim, it shows the Prophet ﷺ on top of a mountain coming down from Jannah. And there are people in front of him and he's telling them, stop, stop. Jannah has run out of virgins. Subhanallah al-azim. They are not only mocking the Prophet ﷺ, but are mocking the basic creed of the Muslims, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant the believers the holders of Jannah. They are making a mockery of this. Now, what is the Islamic stance to these people? Or what will happen to these people? Obviously, this type of thing is not new to Islam. The Prophet ﷺ, as we know, was criticized before and was made fun of before. And this happened in one of the battles, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this scenario specifically in the Quran, in Surah At-Tawbah, in the 65th ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ أَبِاللَّهِ وَآيَاتِهِ وَرَسُولِهِ كُنْتُمْ تَسْتَهْزِئُونَ لَا تَعْتَذِرُوا قَدْ كَفَرْتُمْ بَعْدَ إِيمَانِكُمْ وَإِنْ نَعْفُوا عَنْ طَائِفَةٍ مِّنْكُمْ نُعَذِّبُ طَائِفَةً بِأَنَّكُمْ كَانُوا مُجْرِمِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this ayah, say, is it with Allah and His Messenger and His signs that you make a mockery? Indeed, you have disbelieved after you had brought Iman. And even if we were to forgive a group of you, we would punish the rest, for indeed you are criminals. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about those people who make a mockery of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and make a mockery of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So now obviously it is upon every single Muslim to do what he can to oppose this by educating the non-believers about the Prophet ﷺ and his greatness. And we should make sure that these type of atrocities do not take place in our localities, in our countries, in our regions. We need to make sure of this. These petitions need to be signed. And likewise, those countries that are propagating this ideology of freedom, even though it is more of an act of transgression, they need to be boycotted from their products. That if we are not in need, or if we can find substitutes for their products, we need to cut those products off and make our position known that we will not allow such heresies to take place in front of us. Obviously in our times, we're brought up with the ideology to be passive about everything. that we should be very egotistical and just care about ourselves and not care about anything else. But this is not the stance of a Muslim. The Muslims are one body and one building, and at the head of them is Sayyid al-Bashar, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. At the head of them, of this building, at the head of this stature is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if you try to attack something at its head, you're attacking everything else. So this attack upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, each and everyone needs to take personally. It was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam who said that none of you will truly believe until I am more beloved to him than his wealth and his family and all of mankind. Then why is it that we find Muslims today who do not care about this? Why is it that when such things are mentioned in front of them, they just stay quiet? They're like, we don't want to say anything. We should remain quiet, we should be peaceful people. Brothers and sisters, there's a time to be peaceful and there's a time to defend your honor and your respect. If you let your honor and respect be antagonized and attacked all the time, people will just run over left, right and center. And this ummah has been asleep long enough. It is time we took a stance against those people who attack us. And obviously I'm not talking about strapping bombs around yourself and going out and attacking people. This is not what I'm talking about. But rather the greatest weapon of belief a person can have is an education and an ability to express his beliefs and the ability to express what he stands for in a logical and reasonable manner. And this is what Islam propagates. And this is why Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told us that the seeking of knowledge is incumbent upon every single person, whether he be male or female. And this is why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam led through example that those companions who were around him, he trained them to be the best of leaders. He trained them to be the most honorable of men. You will not find the likes of Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali ever again, because they were from the disciples and companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They had what you call prophetic nurturing, and you will never see it again. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, this was particular to him. But this doesn't prevent us from trying to be like them. That we stand for Islam when we need to stand for Islam, and we're passive people when we need to be passive, when the time allows for it. So brothers and sisters, each and one of us needs to take a stance against this. For indeed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadihi, wa in lam yastati' fa bilisanihi, wa in lam yastati' fa biqalbihi, wa dhalika ad'afu al-iman." That the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that which one of you or whoever amongst you sees an evil deed, then let him change it with his hand, and if he is unable to, then let him do it with his tongue. And if he is unable to, then let him hate it with his heart, and that is the weakest of faith. So now brothers and sisters, it is up to you to decide where you want to be in this hadith. Do you want to be at the top of it or at the bottom of it? The bottom of it being that you hate it in your heart. And if you're thinking, or if you feel inside yourself that, I don't need to take a stance on this, or this only affects the Muslims in Europe, or it is only an attack of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you need to recheck your iman. You need to know that this is from the signs of hypocrisy, that you have no love, you have no respect, you have no what they call ghira for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, meaning no will of protecting him. Subhanahu wa ta'ala wa sallallahu wa sallam. And obviously this ghira is for all of the shrines of Islam. Meaning that whether it be for the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or whether it be for the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or whether it be an attack at the Kaaba or any other shrines of Islam, we need to have this protectiveness for them, for this is from the signs of Iman. And I remind each and every one of you of a great command that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us all with when He said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتَهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا صَلُّوا عَلَيْهِ وَسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم اغفر لحينا وميتنا وشاهدنا وغائبنا وصغيرنا وكبيرنا وذكرنا وأنثانا وإذا أحييت أحدا منا فأحيه على الإسلام وإذا توفيت أحدا منا فتوفاه على الإيمان اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى اللهم أصلح لنا ديننا الذي هو عصمة أمرنا، واصلح لنا دنيانا التي فيها معاشنا، واصلح لنا آخرتنا التي إليها معادنا، واجعل الحياة زيادة لنا في كل خير، والموت راحة لنا من كل شر. وإذا أردت فتنة لنا فاقبضنا إليك غير مفتونين.